I never thought a Tuesday evening in October would be the night that changed everything. My daughter Lily had insisted we leave the school's fall carnival early, which was unusual for her. She loved these events, the games, the cotton candy, seeing her friends. But that night, she'd tugged on my jacket sleeve and whispered, "Dad, can we just go home, please?" The parking lot was still half full when we reached my truck. Lily climbed into the passenger seat without a word, her 7-year-old face unusually pale in the glow of the streetlights. I buckled my seatbelt and was about to start the engine when her small voice stopped me. "Dad, I need to show you something, but please don't get mad." My heart clenched. "Sweetheart, I could never be mad at you. What is it?" She looked around the parking lot, making sure no one was nearby, then slowly lifted the hem of her sweater. What I saw made the air leave my lungs. Bruises. Dark purple and yellow bruises spread across her ribs like someone had painted them there. Some were fresh, others clearly days old. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. "Who did this to you?" I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Harrison," she said quietly. "The principal. But Dad, you can't tell anyone yet. He said if I told, something bad would happen. He said no one would believe me anyway because he's the principal and I'm just a kid." Everything in me wanted to scream, to drive straight back to that school and confront him right there at the carnival. But something in Lily's terrified eyes made me pause. I had to be smart about this. For her. "Lily, look at me." I turned in my seat to face her fully. "You did exactly the right thing by telling me, and I promise you, we're going to handle this. But first, we need to go somewhere, okay? We need to see a doctor." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't want people to know. Everyone likes Mr. Harrison. The teachers, the other parents. They'll think I'm lying." I reached over and took her small hand in mine. "Baby, you are the bravest person I know, and I believe you. That's what matters right now." The drive to Vancouver Children's Hospital felt like it took hours, though it was only 20 minutes. My wife Rachel was visiting her sister in Kelowna, and part of me was relieved she wasn't there yet. I needed to stay calm for Lily, and I knew if Rachel saw those bruises, she'd be as devastated as I was, barely holding myself together. The emergency room doctor, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, was gentle and thorough. She took photographs, asked careful questions, and her face grew more serious with each answer Lily gave. After the examination, she pulled me aside. "Mr. Sutherland, these injuries are consistent with repeated physical abuse. The pattern suggests multiple incidents over at least 2 to 3 weeks. I'm legally required to report this to Child Protective Services and the police." "Good," I said, "because the person who did this is the principal of her elementary school." Dr. Chen's expression darkened. Then, this just became even more complicated. People in positions of authority, they're often protected by systems that should be protecting children instead. She wasn't wrong. When the police arrived an hour later, Officer Martinez seemed sympathetic as he took Lily's statement. But when I mentioned Mr. Harrison's name, I saw something flicker across his face. Doubt? Disbelief? Jason Harrison, the principal at Maplewood Elementary? Officer Martinez set down his pen. "I've known Jason for 15 years. He's been principal there for 12 years. He started the after-school mentorship program, coaches youth soccer. His own kids go to that school. I don't care if he's won awards," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Look at my daughter's injuries. She's 7 years old and she's terrified to go back to school. I'm not saying I don't believe your daughter, Mr. Sutherland. I'm just saying we need to be careful about accusations like this. Jason Harrison is a well-respected member of this community." That phrase, "well-respected member of this community," would haunt me for weeks. Officer Martinez took our statement and left. Dr. Chen gave me a list of child psychologists and advised keeping Lily home from school until the investigation was complete. When we finally got home around midnight, I carried Lily to her bed. She was exhausted, but she grabbed my hand before I could leave. "Dad, you really believe me, right?" "Every single word, sweetheart. Every single word." I called Rachel from the kitchen. She answered on the first ring, and when I told her what happened, I heard her break down over the phone. "I'm leaving now," she said. "I'll be home in 4 hours." I spent those 4 hours sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the photos Dr. Chen had given me copies of. My beautiful little girl, marked and hurt by someone who was supposed to protect her. Someone parents trusted. Someone I had trusted. I'm a software engineer, and my job involves solving problems through logic and data. So that's what I started doing. I opened my laptop and began researching. Jason Harrison's name brought up dozens of articles and photos. There he was at the district awards ceremony. There he was cutting the ribbon at the new school library. There he was surrounded by smiling children at the summer reading program. And then I found something that made my blood run cold. A comment on a local parenting forum from 8 months ago. Anonymous post. Has anyone else noticed that Mr. Harrison at Maplewood seems to spend a lot of one-on-one time with certain students? My daughter says he calls kids to his office during recess. Is this normal? The responses were dismissive. He's just being a good principal, checking in on students. Some parents are so paranoid these days. Mr. Harrison has an excellent reputation. I kept digging. 3 years ago, a parent had filed a complaint with the school district about inappropriate physical contact involving Harrison. The complaint was investigated and deemed unfounded. The parent had transferred their child to another school. By the time Rachel got home at 4 a.m, I had filled a notebook with information. She went straight to Lily's room and stayed there for an hour. When she came out, her eyes were red, and her jaw was set in a way I recognized. Rachel was a medical office manager, used to dealing with difficult situations and bureaucracy. But this was our daughter. What do we do? She asked. We fight, I said. But we have to be smart about it. The next morning, Officer Martinez called. Mr. Sutherland, I spoke with Principal Harrison this morning. He denies the allegations completely. He says Lily is a sweet kid but has been having some behavioral issues lately, acting out, not following directions. He suggests the bruises might be from rough play with other students and that perhaps she's made up this story to avoid getting in trouble for something else. I felt my blood pressure spike. Are you serious right now? You saw the photos. Those aren't from rough play. And my daughter doesn't lie. I understand you're upset, but we have to look at all possibilities. The school district is conducting their own investigation. In the meantime, Mr. Harrison will continue in his position. There's no concrete evidence linking him to the injuries. What about my daughter's statement? Unfortunately, without corroborating evidence or witnesses, it's difficult to move forward with charges, especially against someone with Mr. Harrison's standing in the community. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. Rachel and I made the decision that morning. If the police and the school district weren't going to protect our daughter, we would. But we needed evidence. I started by reaching out to other parents at Maplewood Elementary. Carefully, casually. Hey, how's your kid liking school this year? Any issues? Most people had nothing but praise for the school and Mr. Harrison, but 3 conversations stood out. A mother named Jennifer mentioned her son had become anxious about going to school this year. He used to love it, but now he complains of stomach aches every morning. When I ask if something's wrong, he just says he doesn't like going to the principal's office. A father named David said his daughter had started having nightmares. She won't tell us what they're about, but she's been wetting the bed again, something she hasn't done since she was 4. And a mother named Patricia told me, with tears in her eyes, that her daughter had asked if it was normal for teachers to give special hugs that hurt. I documented everything, every conversation, every concern. And then I did something that probably crossed a legal line, but I didn't care anymore. I hacked into the school's security camera system. It wasn't difficult. Most schools use outdated security systems with default passwords that haven't been changed. Within an hour, I had access to 3 weeks of archived footage. I started going through it systematically, focusing on the times when students would be called to the principal's office. What I found made me physically ill. Footage of Mr. Harrison closing his office blinds before meeting with students. Footage of children leaving his office with different body language than when they entered, shoulders hunched, looking at the ground. And on one particular video from 2 weeks ago, I saw Lily entering his office with a smile, and leaving 15 minutes later with tears on her face, walking stiffly. I burned it all to a USB drive. Then I made 3 copies. The next step was riskier. I needed an insider, someone who worked at the school who might have noticed something. I remembered Lily mentioning her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, who had been at Maplewood for 20 years. If anyone would know something, it would be her. I showed up at the school on my lunch break, asking to speak with Mrs. Patterson. The secretary tried to have me make an appointment, but I insisted it was urgent. When Mrs. Patterson came out, I could see she was nervous. "Mr. Sutherland, I heard about the allegations. I want you to know that Mr. Harrison has been nothing but professional." "Please," I interrupted quietly. "Just give me 5 minutes." "Not here. Can we talk in your classroom?" Something in my voice must have convinced her. We walked to her empty classroom, and I closed the door. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to protect my daughter. And I think I know there are other children who need protecting too." I showed her the medical photos on my phone, watched as her face went pale. "How long have you suspected?" I asked gently. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she sat down heavily at her desk. 3 years, she whispered. "I've suspected for 3 years. Different students, different grades. Subtle changes in behavior, increased anxiety. One child who used to volunteer to help with office tasks, suddenly refusing to go anywhere near the principal's office. But I never had proof. And when I mentioned concerns to the vice principal 2 years ago, I was told I was being overly sensitive and that Mr. Harrison's methods were unconventional but effective." "Were you told to stay quiet?" "Not explicitly, but the message was clear. Mr. Harrison brings in a lot of funding through his community connections. The district superintendent is his brother-in-law. The school board chairman's wife works as his secretary. People who questioned him found themselves transferred to different schools. I have 3 years until retirement, Mr. Sutherland. I'm ashamed to say I kept my head down. But you're talking to me now." She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Because I saw Lily last week, before this came out. She came to my classroom during recess, and I asked if she was okay. She said yes, but she had this look in her eyes, like she was somewhere else, like she was trying to disappear. I've seen that look before on other children, and I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore, even if it costs me my job." "Would you be willing to make a formal statement, if it helps Lily and the other children?" "Yes. But Mr. Sutherland, you need to understand what you're up against. This isn't just about one man. It's about a system that's protected him for years." I left that meeting with Mrs. Patterson's written statement and a renewed determination. Rachel and I decided our next move had to be public. Going through official channels had gotten us nowhere. The police weren't investigating. The school district was circling wagons. We needed to force their hand. The next school board meeting was in 3 days. Those meetings were open to the public, with a period for parent concerns. Rachel and I prepared carefully. We made copies of all our evidence, the medical reports, the camera footage, Mrs. Patterson's statement, the accounts from other concerned parents. We consulted with a lawyer friend who advised us on how to present the information without leaving ourselves open to a defamation lawsuit. "Stick to facts," he said. "Don't make accusations you can't back up. Let the evidence speak for itself." The night of the school board meeting, the chamber was packed. Word had somehow gotten out that something big was happening. I recognized many faces from Maplewood parents, teachers, district administrators, and sitting in the front row, looking calm and confident, was Jason Harrison. When the public comment period began, I stood up. My hands were shaking, but Rachel squeezed my hand as I walked to the podium. "My name is Marcus Sutherland. 3 weeks ago, my 7-year-old daughter told me that she had been physically abused by the principal of her school, Jason Harrison." The room erupted. People gasped. Others started talking at once. The board chairman banged his gavel. "Mr. Sutherland, these are serious accusations." "They are. Which is why I'm not making them lightly." I held up the folder of evidence. "I have medical documentation of injuries to my daughter. I have security camera footage from the school showing suspicious patterns of behavior. I have a statement from a teacher with 20 years' experience at Maplewood expressing concerns about Mr. Harrison's interactions with students. And I have accounts from multiple parents whose children have shown signs of trauma this school year." "This is highly irregular," the superintendent said, standing up. He was a large man with gray hair and an authoritative voice. "The district is conducting its own investigation. Making these accusations publicly could compromise." "Your investigation?" I cut him off, and I didn't care anymore about being polite. "Your investigation that allowed Mr. Harrison to continue working with children while my daughter is too terrified to go to school? The same kind of investigation that happened 3 years ago when another parent filed a complaint, only to have it dismissed?" More gasps from the crowd. "Mr. Harrison's calm expression finally cracked slightly. I'm here tonight because the systems that should protect our children have failed, I continued. Because when I went to the police, I was told that accusations against a well-respected member of the community were difficult to pursue. Because when I filed a complaint with the district, I was told to wait for the investigation while my daughter suffers. So I'm bringing this evidence to you, to all of you, publicly, because I believe you deserve to know what's happening in our school. I distributed copies of the evidence to each board member. Some looked uncomfortable, others angry. The superintendent tried to regain control of the meeting, but parents were already standing up, demanding to be heard. Jennifer, the mother I'd spoken to, stood up and shared her son's increased anxiety. Patricia talked about her daughter's nightmares. David mentioned the behavioral changes in his child. One by one, parents who had been silent, who had trusted the system, began to speak. Mr. Harrison finally stood up. These accusations are completely baseless. I have dedicated my career to these children. This is a witch hunt led by a disgruntled parent whose child has been having disciplinary issues. My daughter is 7 years old and has bruises on her ribs, I said, my voice echoing through the chamber. Don't you dare try to blame her for this. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, the board had no choice but to promise a full independent investigation, to place Mr. Harrison on administrative leave pending the outcome, and to review their policies on reporting and investigating abuse allegations. But the real victory came 2 days later. Officer Martinez called me in the morning. His voice was different this time, apologetic, almost. Mr. Sutherland, I wanted to let you know that we've reopened the investigation. After the school board meeting, 4 more families came forward with concerns about Mr. Harrison. We've obtained a warrant to search his office and home computer. What changed? I asked. Honestly, your evidence. And the fact that you made it public. It's a lot harder to ignore when the whole community is watching. The search of Mr. Harrison's office and computer turned up what the police called disturbing evidence photographs on his personal laptop, concerning notes about specific students, and a pattern of documentation that showed he had been targeting vulnerable children for years. Children from single-parent homes, children with learning difficulties, children who were less likely to speak up or be believed. Jason Harrison was arrested on a Wednesday morning. 3 weeks after that night, Lily showed me her bruises. The charges were extensive, multiple counts of assault, child abuse, and possession of exploitative materials. As the investigation expanded, more victims came forward, children who had since moved to other schools. Teenagers now in high school who had been in elementary school when Harrison first became principal 12 years ago. The number of victims eventually reached 17. The trial took place 6 months later. Rachel and I made sure to attend every day, though we kept Lily home. She wasn't required to testify in person. They used her video statement instead. The defense tried every tactic they could, attacking the credibility of the children, suggesting mass hysteria, questioning the chain of evidence on the security footage I'd obtained. But in the end, the evidence was overwhelming. 17 victims, medical documentation, electronic evidence, Mrs. Patterson's testimony about the concerning patterns she'd observed. The defense's arguments fell apart under the weight of truth. Jason Harrison was convicted on 16 of the 19 counts. The judge sentenced him to 23 years in prison. The superintendent, Harrison's brother-in-law, resigned under pressure. The school board chairman stepped down. 3 administrators who had dismissed previous complaints were reassigned. The district implemented new mandatory reporting requirements and training for all staff on recognizing signs of abuse. But the real work was just beginning. Lily started seeing a therapist, Dr. Michelle Thompson, who specialized in childhood trauma. The first few months were hard. Lily had nightmares. She was afraid of men with authority. She struggled with trusting adults at her new school. There were setbacks and difficult days. But slowly, week by week, month by month, I saw my daughter come back to herself. The light returned to her eyes. She started playing with her friends again. She joined the school's art club and discovered she loved painting. By the end of that first year, she could talk about what happened without breaking down. You know what I learned, Dad? She told me one evening while we were making dinner together. She was 8 now, starting to lose her baby face and look more like the young lady she was becoming. I learned that speaking up is scary, but staying quiet is scarier. And that even when people don't believe you at first, the truth is still the truth. You're absolutely right, sweetheart, I said, pulling her into a hug. And you were so incredibly brave. I wasn't brave at first, she said quietly. I was scared. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are scared. Rachel and I became advocates for stronger child protection policies in schools. We worked with other parents to create a support network for families dealing with abuse allegations. I spoke at school district meetings across the province about the importance of believing children and investigating complaints thoroughly, regardless of who the accused is. Mrs. Patterson didn't lose her job. In fact, she became a vocal advocate for protecting children, using her experience to train other teachers on recognizing warning signs and the importance of speaking up, even when it's uncomfortable. The other families whose children were victims also started healing. Some moved away to start fresh. Others, like us, stayed and worked to make sure this could never happen again. We formed a parent coalition that pushed for increased transparency in school district investigations, background checks for all school employees, and regular audits of safety protocols. It's been 2 years now since that October evening when Lily told me her secret. She's 9 years old, thriving in 4th grade at a different school. She still sees Dr. Thompson occasionally, but the nightmares have mostly stopped. She has friends. She laughs. She's a regular kid again. But she's also different in some ways. She's more aware of the world around her, more conscious of right and wrong. She told me recently that when she grows up, she wants to be a lawyer who helps kids. Because every kid deserves someone who believes them, she said. Last month, I received a letter from one of the other families. Their daughter, who had been one of Harrison's victims, had written me a note. It said, "Thank you for believing your daughter and for not giving up. Because you fought for Lily, my parents believe me too. You saved a lot of kids." I keep that letter in my desk drawer. On the hard days, when I think about how close we came to not being believed, how easily Lily could have stayed silent out of fear, I read it and remember why every moment of that fight was worth it. There are lessons I've learned through all of this that I think every parent needs to hear. First, always believe your children when they tell you something is wrong. Children rarely lie about abuse. The statistics show that false allegations are extremely rare. When your child trusts you enough to speak up, that trust is a gift. Don't waste it by dismissing their concerns. Second, don't be swayed by someone's reputation or position. Predators often deliberately place themselves in positions of trust and authority. They count on that authority to shield them from suspicion. Being well-liked, being successful, being a pillar of the community doesn't make someone incapable of harm. Judge people by their actions, not their titles. Third, if the systems fail you, don't give up. Document everything, gather evidence, find allies, be willing to make noise, even when people tell you to stay quiet. Sometimes the only way to create change is to force people to pay attention. Fourth, healing takes time. There's no quick fix for trauma. Be patient with your children, with yourself, with the process. Celebrate small victories. Get professional help. Build a support network. Recovery isn't linear, but it is possible. And finally, teach your children that their bodies are their own, that they have the right to say no, that secrets about touching or being hurt should always be told to a trusted adult. Give them the language to express when something feels wrong. Create an environment where they know you'll listen without judgment. The evening after Harrison's sentencing, Lily and I were sitting on the back porch watching the sunset. It was summer, warm and peaceful. She leaned against my shoulder. "Dad," she said quietly. "Yeah, sweetheart? I'm glad I told you. Even though it was scary, even though everything that happened after was hard, I'm glad I told you." I wrapped my arm around her. "I'm glad you told me too, baby. I'm so proud of you. Do you think other kids will be safer now because of what we did? I know they will be. You helped change things, Lily. You helped make sure this can't happen as easily to other kids." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Good. That makes the scary parts worth it." And she was right. Every scary moment, every difficult conversation, every time we had to relive the trauma, it was all worth it to protect our daughter and the children who came after. Because at the end of the day, there is nothing more important than keeping our children safe. No reputation is worth protecting more than a child. No system is more important than a child's well-being. No discomfort in believing difficult truths is worse than a child suffering in silence. If you're a parent reading this, look at your children. Really look at them. Notice when their behavior changes. Ask questions. Create space for them to tell you hard things. And if they do come to you with something like this, believe them. Fight for them. Burn it all down if you have to. Because your child's safety isn't just important, it's everything. Lily's laughter drifts in from the living room where she's playing a board game with Rachel. It's a sound I never take for granted anymore. Every moment of normalcy, every smile, every peaceful evening, they're all precious now in a way they weren't before. We survived something that tried to break us. But we didn't just survive, we grew stronger. Our family is closer, our daughter is resilient, and we learned that even when the whole world seems set up to protect the powerful instead of the vulnerable, a parent's love can move mountains. Sometimes late at night, I still think about that evening in the hospital parking lot, about the fear in Lily's eyes when she showed me those bruises, about how easily she could have stayed silent, about how close we came to being just another family that trusted the wrong person. But then I remember, she didn't stay silent. She told me, and I believed her, and together we made sure that her voice and the voices of all those other children were finally heard. That's the legacy I want to leave. Not just for Lily, but for every child who's ever been hurt and afraid to speak. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. And there will always be people willing to fight for you, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Because that's what love does. It fights. It protects. It believes. And it never, ever gives up.